let's have a look at mixed and improper fractions. So if I write a fraction with a whole number and a fraction, we call that a mixed fraction. However, if we write it where the numerator is bigger than the denominator, then that's an improper fraction. So let's have a look. So if I take, for example, these images here, 2.5 pizzas. So the first one, I would say I've got 2.5. I've got a whole number and a fraction, so this is our mixed fraction. Okay. Whereas the next one, what I've done now is I've actually separated them out and said, right, well, here's a half, here's a half, here's a half, here's a half, here's a half. How many half pizzas do I have? And in this case, I've got 5 half pizzas. So I would write that as 5/2. And that then is your improper fraction. So these are the two types that we need to be able to go between. So let's have a look at how we can convert. So we can do this visually, or we can do it using equivalent fractions. So for example, this first one there, I've got one whole there, another whole there, and then I've got 3 parts out of 5. So altogether I've got 2 wholes and I've got 3/5. So that would be our mixed fraction. Whereas if I'm doing it as an improper fraction, I want to know how many fifths do I have in total. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've got 13 fifths. So I would write that as 13/5. And that is our improper fraction. Okay, so that's doing it visually. Let's do this in a different way. So let's now look at 4 2/3 and say, right, how do I go from mixed to improper? So think about, what does 4 2/3 mean? Well, it means 4 2/3, I've got 4 wholes, okay, and I've got 2/3. So now think about those 4 wholes, and if I had one whole, in that one whole I would split it into, not into 4 pieces, sorry, I'm doing in thirds, so I would split that into 3 pieces. So in each of those, in each one of the 4 holes, each of those are split into 3 pieces. So that's the same as 12 thirds plus 2/3, okay? Because what I've done there is I've just said 4 times 3, because 3 per whole, that gives me 12 thirds. And then I can add those. 12 plus 2 is 14, and so that would be written as 14/3. Now, once you're comfortable knowing and understanding what this is, one of the shortcut ways to do that is to be able to say, right, let's do 4 multiplied by 3 and then add 2. So I do 4 times 3 plus 2, all divided by 3, and that gives me the same thing there, 14/3. Okay, so think about which way you're most comfortable doing and use that method.